So I would expect Berri to mostly go for some big bets here. Maybe even goes for some kind of like 20k plus bet. Who knows? And he does. He goes for basically a 2x pot over bet. As you can tell, they're quite deep here, about 150 big blinds deep. That's going to change things a little bit pre-flop and obviously post-flop. So Berri goes for a 2.5x open raise size, 2.4, fine. Linus 3-bets to 10 big blinds, which is a pretty standard 3-bet size. Most guys go somewhere between 9 and 11 big blinds. Berri calls, and the flop is Queen Jack 4 rainbow. This board is way better for LLinusLLove than it is for Berri Sweet, because he has queens and jacks every single time, and Berri probably doesn't always have them. He's definitely going to 4-bet queens most of the time, jacks I would imagine as well. And he's not going to have kings and aces, so Linus can bet this board somewhat aggressively. So let's see if he uses a bigger size or a smaller one. Neither. He checks, which means that he probably would have selected some bigger bets on the flop sometimes. Berri goes for around 60% pot. He's saying, hey, I'm quite polarized for stabbing on this board. It's not a great board for me, so when I bet, I'm going to size up a little bit. Makes sense. Turns an 8, which is great for Berri Sweet, because he's going to have 10 unsuited here quite a bit, although I expect Linus to be so deceptive that he will have 10 unsuited himself sometimes. Berri's betting here. I mean, he's representing a good queen or better at this point. If he had a hand like, queen 5 suited, I think he would probably just check back on the turn, right? If he stabbed a hand like ace jack sometimes, I think he would check behind. So he's representing at least king queen, I would say. Maybe he's representing a hand like queen 10 of diamonds. Linus calls, and the river's a king, which doesn't look too good for Berri. I mean, if he has king queen, he's not improved, right? If he was bluffing with ace 10, he's not improved. I guess king 10 will now check behind, so he improves with a decent amount of hands. Linus, I don't think he will check call with hand like ace king on the turn, right? Unless he has exactly ace king of diamonds. And I mean, it's not even as if that hand is so strong to begin with. So Berri shoves here, and it's kind of difficult to find bluffs, right? Like, what is this guy bluffing with? I mean, is he bluffing with 8-9 suited, or, a 4 or an under pair? Is he just randomly bluffing it off with jack 10? No, he's not. He wasn't. He was value betting. He's value betting pocket 4s, which makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, he unblocks a lot of Linus's hands like 2 pair and 1 pair, and, I think he's going to get called by a lot of worse hands. And Linus, he slow played top set on the flop. Makes sense, right? I mean, when you have 3 queens in your hand, what are you getting called by? Yeah, pocket 4, sure, but pocket 4s is putting in the money anyway. So I think it's a really cool play by Linus. Obviously, 3-betting and just check calling down. I'll give him a 9.5. I mean, it wasn't the most difficult play in the world, right? I mean, you trapped with top set. At the same time, I really like it. And Berri barreled 3 streets. I think his play is worth a 9.5 as well. I think he did everything right. So pretty cool start to the session. So Linus makes it 980 on the button. A little bit more expensive than Berri made it. And we see a king 9-8 flop, a king 9-5 flop, which is kind of neutral. I mean, Linus is going to improve a little bit more than Berri will, but both of them are just going to have a lot of 1 pairs and gut shots and just nothing, right? Obviously, Linus is going to have pocket kings, but Berri can't. Linus is going to have 9s, Berri can't. Berri may even 3-bet hand like pocket 5s sometimes, hands like king 9 suited, obviously ace king, so Linus can happily bet pretty aggressively here. And so he goes for a small bet, which is a sizing that a lot of people would employ on a board like this. Now, this jack definitely changes things. I mean, both guys can definitely have queen 9 or king jack or jack 9. So both guys are a little bit careful here, unless, of course, they've got it. So Linus goes for a pot-sized bet. He's saying, well, I don't want to overbet, I mean, the board is good for me, but it's not great. So I'm just going to go for a pot-sized bet, which is a cool bet size. Berri Sweet check raises, and the thing is, even if he had a hand like jack 9, right, or maybe even king jack, I don't think he would check raise necessarily. So I think he's representing basically queen 10, at least not a whole lot worse. Maybe he takes in like pocket 5s. He doesn't always check raise the flop. Maybe check raises now, but he's mainly repping he's mainly representing queen 10. And Berri's really repping a strong range here, right? I mean, Linus bet full pot on the turn, which is pretty solid for him. And Berri Sweet just check raises huge. And now on the 6, which doesn't change a whole lot. I guess like 8-7 of spades gets there. Maybe like, king 6 of spades. But other than that, nothing really changes. He just shoves 2x pot. And Linus can easily have queen 10 himself. Or, He can, okay, I guess he can even have, you know, some hands like sets, right? And he can have hands like 2 pairs. So it seems like Berri's really not afraid. He looks pretty strong to me. But then again, maybe he has a hand like 10-9 and he's bluffing, right? And Berri was bluffing. Crazy. So, okay. So Berri defended 7-8 off pre-flop, which is standard. You could 3-bet if you wanted to, but standard. And then you check all the flop with a, you know, weaker gut shot, which is fine. You can raise your hand sometimes, but, you know, when you have a weak gut shot, generally, you don't really want to build a pot. And then on the turn, you actually check raise against a pot-sized bet. The problem is that a lot of your outs are not live, right? So, I mean, he hit basically his dream run out, an offsuit 6, which is so unlikely. I mean, that's 3 outs, and he was still dead. So, yeah, this is quite spastic by him. You know, I'd way prefer to see him check raise a hand like maybe 10-8, you know, or maybe something like 10-9 where he blocks 2 pairs and he blocks a set, he blocks a straight, and he has a little bit more equity. So this check raise seems quite spastic. So he must think that Linus is quite aggressive here, and he will then do a lot of folding. But even then, I think this is very aggressive. And then on the river, I mean, I don't want to get too much into detail, but this is technically not the greatest play. Yeah, but yeah, he definitely tried to milk Linus there, but instead he got milked. So I'll give Linus a 9.5 out of 10 again. I think his play was great. Obviously, you know, you got the nuts on the turn, you call down, and, you know, obviously happily click call on the river. So it wasn't very special, but I think it's a good play. I'll give him a 4.5 out of 10. I think his play is not terrible, but it's very aggressive, right? And I think this type of play is actually great against a very weak reg who you can easily run over. But LLinusLLove is not exactly a weak reg. You know, he's a fearless top reg. So against a guy like him, sure, at a low frequency, you can justify just about anything, but I don't think this is a very good play. And yeah, obviously he paid the maximum amount for it, but, you know, so be it. We've got Berri on the button this time, giving Linus a $20 discount. Linus was making it $9.80, but no discount this time because Linus makes it $4K. Flops 8 deuce deuce, which is a pretty safe board for both of them, right? I mean, Linus is afraid of a couple of deuces in Berri's range, like king deuce, ace deuce, maybe a hand like 4 deuce, and obviously deuces, and he's afraid of, you know, pocket 8s and some 8x, maybe some pocket 9s and flush draws. But other than those few hands, he's pretty happy. So Linus is going to bet this board pretty aggressively, and he goes with a quarter pot bet, a very small bet, basically saying, hey, I don't really know you. I know you really don't have much here. I don't need to bet very large in order to apply pressure. So if Linus bets a lot of his range, like king, queen, ace, king, obviously this card is really, really good for him. So he's going to continue to bet a lot, but he doesn't bet now, right? He definitely needs to have checks. Berri bets a third pot, and Linus calls. So Linus is representing hands like, you know, hands like pocket jacks when he takes this line, or maybe a hand like ace, queen of hearts. He's representing some type of medium strength hand. Berri bets full pot here. So when Berri bets full pot, I would say he's representing at least a king. And he may even check back a king sometimes on the turn. So he's representing a pretty good king. You know, a hand like, for instance, king jack spades, or he's repping a hand like pocket 8s. You know, a hand like pocket 3s would be really dirty, or a hand like king 3. Oh, and he actually did have pocket 3s. Yeah, sick hand. So Berri called a 3-bet with pocket 3s, which is standard heads up. I mean, Linus is going to be 3-betting over 20% of the time. And against that range, you can fold. And obviously not folding is a quarter pot bet on the flop. I mean, you have the best hand most of the time. And Berri actually bet the turn, which is a bit unorthodox. I mean, he cannot expect to get called by ace high or worse much often. So I think he was trying to set up a bluff, except that, you know, he rivered it. So, you know, do you guys know that feeling when you kind of feel like you're spazzing a little bit and then you get there and you get paid off? It's such a disgusting but awesome feeling at the same time. You know, I'm sure you guys have all felt it. So Linus's hand, I don't know how to rate it because we're not seeing it. I mean, if he has Jack 10 high, obviously he's not getting a very high rating. But if he has, like, let's say, King 5 of spades, I would give him a great rating because that would have been a cool play. And Berri, I'll give him an 8 out of 10. I think it's a good play. What do you guys think of this one? So Berri in the button this time, and they're quite deep. Linus now only calls, so Flops king, jack, 9. That's definitely a favorable flop for Berri. I mean, Linus can have hands like king, jack, jack, 9, queen, 10, but not always, right? Whereas Berri's always going to have him. So Berri goes for the third pot bet, and he's going to bet very aggressively here. 6 doesn't change a whole lot. I guess a couple of 2 pairs get there, but not much else. So Berri's pretty happy about his hand, and he decides to overbet. Makes sense. 7 again doesn't change a whole lot. I guess 10-8 gets there, and Berri is way more likely to have 10-8 than Linus is. So I would expect Berri to mostly go for some big bets here. Maybe even goes for some kind of like 20k plus bet. Who knows? And he does. He goes for basically a 2x pot overbet. So he's basically saying, Linus, fuck you. I've got queen 10. You don't. I've got 10-8. You don't. I've got sets. I've got 2 pairs. You don't have very many of them. Your range is very capped, and I'm going to be attacking you. So Linus has defended king 5 off pre, standard, called flop and turn, standard. And on the river, he's thinking he blocks an occasional straight, like 8-5 suited, or even offsuit. And Berri will turn some hands like gut shots into a bluff, right? Like a single queen or a 10 or some kind of pair that he rivered. So pretty loose call by Linus. He has to believe Berri is a little bit out of line here. So I'll give Linus a 9. I mean, it's hard to say whether or not this is a great call, but given that he's played Berri so much, he must think he's very aggressive, and he can make this call. So yeah, nice play. And Berri, he barreled the flop with a gut shot, turned an open-ender, good double barrel. And on the river, he's thinking, well, my 7 doesn't really win. But I block hand like 2 pair, I block hand like king 7 that calls me. I block a straight, so good overbetting hand. So I'll give him a 9 out of 10 as well. So nice hand by both of them. Nice way to finish the review.